We're going to tell you 3 Necron tactics that will still be effective even when the Codex comes out.
Well, hopefully.
The first tactic uses a model that isn't even out yet at the time of filming right now. It's called the Locust Destroyer.
Yeah, now these Locust Destroyers, there's a good chance they're going to replace the Heavy Destroyers. I mean, you know, we're only 2 weeks out from the Codex, so we don't know for sure, but it already looks like it's taking the function of the Heavy Destroyer. Now, the Heavy Destroyer fires one powerful Strength 9 shot.
Oh my God.
The Locust Destroyer is firing one heavy Strength 10 shot. The Heavy Destroyer does D6 wounds. This thing does 3d3 damage. It's massive.
The Necron Big Bertha.
Yeah, this is huge. Now, what we know about Heavy Destroyers is that while it's a minimum 1 model in a unit, you can take multiple in the same unit. So there is a pretty good chance, even when the Codex comes out, you're going to be able to do the same thing. But this combo doesn't actually matter whether that's true or not. The fact is, we're dealing with a one-shot weapon that is uber powerful. Up to 9 damage in a single hit with a minimum of 3.
Gross.
Yeah, this is super powered. You want it to hit. And the easiest way to make sure this hits is by using a Necron Overlord. Now, the Necron Overlords have a special ability called My Will Be Done.
Yeah.
It lets you pick one Necron unit and give them +1 to hit. Now, the Locust Destroyer hits on a 3, which means you've only got a 2 in 3 chance of that thing firing. To put it in perspective, in a 6-turn game, you've got to assume that for 2 turns, it's going to be completely ineffective. But when you match it with a Necron Overlord, which isn't actually a lot of points, it enables you to give +1 to hit. Suddenly you're hitting on a 2 or higher, which is massive. But then when we add in the fact that destroyers, and we know it's a destroyer because the title Destroyer,
yes,
have a built-in ability called Hardwired for Hatred, which gives them reroll 1s to hit.
Oh my God.
We're now looking at something that is Strength 10, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. This is going to be massive. You can take more than 1 in a unit. The firepower from this is going to be immense.
That's terrible to go against. Oh my God.
It is absolutely
scared.
Yeah, and so this is a combo that we are very, very sure is going to survive into the new Necron Codex. Now, there's an argument this new core unit thing could stop it if the destroyers aren't a core unit. However, we are seeing the fact that core units can be things like Terminators and Elites and stuff like that. And with the destroyers being such a staple of the Necron army, I think it's worth gambling that the core unit fits within the concept of something that the Necrons would be able to impact. Also, and it's worth saying, My Will Be Done is a little bit different than a typical aura buff. Your normal aura buffs affect everyone around you, and the fear that Games Workshop had was that that was being abused. Because the Necron Overlord only targets 1 unit, there is a chance that it may not say a core unit. It may just say 1 unit because he's just talking to 1. So either way, I'm pretty sure this combo is going to be something that lasts. And of course, I mean, it's a pretty simple combo, so that's going to stand.
Nice and easy and oh so effective.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about the Scorpek Destroyers and Strategic Reserves.
So yeah, one of the biggest problems people are having with their Scorpek Destroyers is they're getting blown off the table early in the game. This is the Necron Close Combat Unit. Historically, the Necron Close Combat Units have been very fast moving and they've had a massive invulnerable save. The Wraiths in 8th edition had a 3-up invulnerable save, which kept them alive as they got into close combat, but they weren't as effective as the Destroyers in close combat. Now the Necrons have this brand new unit, the Scorpek Destroyers, who are brutal. You put them with the Scorpek Lords, they're rerolling 1s to hit and 1s to wound. These things are absolute beasts. The problem is people just shooting them off the board nice and early. But everyone's forgetting the fact that strategic reserves can apply to any unit in the game. For 1 command point, my maxed out squad of Scorpek Destroyers with their plasma sight that lets them get extra attacks can be off the board. And then, for a single command point, I can even arrive from my opponent's deployment zone 9 inches away from the enemy, and now there's a real threat.
Wow.
Now, what's cool about this is a lot of people will argue, yeah, but they may not charge that first turn, so you might be able to take him out. And while that is true, it's still a threat in their deployment zone that they're going to have to contend with. You can often bring them in on an objective and sit and hold an objective. And if your opponent's been doing a very aggressive maneuver against you into your deployment zone, now they've got to worry about whether they go back to deal with this threat in their zone or whether they keep going forward. And there is a good chance those Scorpek Destroyers are going to survive a single round of shooting if they fail to charge, which they may actually just charge. And then that distraction is then going to be enough to hopefully mess up your opponent's plans and maybe even get those destroyers into combat.
Yeah, just throw in elements, and I mean, those things are so nasty in close combat, anyone's going to have to...
Absolutely, and if you do spend that second command point and bring the Scorpek Destroyer or the Scorpek Lord with them, that's massive because he comes with a gun, and it's a pretty powerful gun as well. So now you've got the Destroyers in their zone and the Destroyer Lord. And again, because of targeting and the way that works, it's going to be pretty difficult to take out both of those units. And the Destroyer Lord himself, with his 4-up and vulnerable save, is still going to do some meaty damage.
Yeah.
So either way, I think it's worth, with all Necrons now, spending the 2 command points and keeping those Scorpek Destroyers in the back just to really harass the enemy. So we're like, again, 90% sure that's going to survive into the new Necron Codex.
For sure. Hey, so now let's talk about the Royal Warden and the Locust Destroyer.
Yeah, the one of the biggest sort of like penalties that affected the Necrons in this edition is the fact that the fly keyword no longer lets you leave combat and shoot. There were so many Necron armies that were abusing this rule, and quite rightly so, because there wasn't that much that Necrons could abuse. But the ability to have a lot of their high shooting troops have the ability to leave combat and keep firing was great. And now that's gone, it's real bit of a pain in the butt for most Necron players. The Royal Warden gives that ability back to 1 unit. The complaint about the Royal Warden, however, is he's only got a 5-inch movement. The Locust Destroyer has a movement of 8, which is really important because if you're advancing, you're going to roll on average between a 3 and a 4 on a dice. That means the Royal Warden with his movement of 5 plus a 3 or 4 brings you to 8 or 9, meaning that an advancing Royal Warden moves as fast as the Locust Destroyers.
Oh.
So now you can have a Royal Warden within 3 inches of the Destroyers who can't be targeted as long as he's within the Destroyer's range, unless he's the closest model. And now those Destroyers can move around and your opponent doesn't have the ability to just touch them in combat and stop them firing.
Yeah.
They leave combat and they start blasting. Worse, if somebody does do that to you, your Royal Warden in the turn that he does that, of course doesn't have to advance, he can just let rip with his own gun, which is just as nasty.
Oh,
so it's a really cool little combo that I think we're going to see players do a lot, especially if what we're seeing in this new edition is this core unit thing being pretty big. People are going to move away from super characters running around the board and high-powered things, and instead probably go more towards a mass buff, where I'll take 2 or 3 units of the same kind that will benefit. So if I've got 2 squads of Locust Destroyers with a Royal Warden there, even if you shoot one off the board, I can counterattack with the other one. The Royal Warden's ability can only target 1 unit anyway, so it really just creates this really nasty little scenario for somebody where they've got to pick and choose what they're dealing with, and no matter what you choose, you're going to get slapped in the face.
Yeah, oh my god. I'm like having nightmares going up against Eve now.
Yeah, it's great. So I really do think the Royal Warden's a strong miniature, and it's funny because Eve hasn't yet adopted the Royal Warden. She's still focusing on like the Scorpek Destroyer and the Destroyers, but she's definitely coming up to a few games where the Destroyers get in close combat and then they can't fire again. So I'm waiting for her to like click and think, oh, you know what, I need a Royal Warden with any squad of Destroyers. So yeah, so there it is, 3 simple tactics that absolutely anybody can use. It's worth mentioning as well, if you want to learn more about the competitive tactics, maybe you want to see how we go about designing armies, we have a very specific method that we call the 4 pillars of army design that we always follow that enables us to make pretty effective armies. We have a free guide that breaks down all these things, and you can download it by looking for a link somewhere in the description of this video. Download the guide completely for free and learn how we go about doing it.